Hey everybody, Simon here. In this update, I want to talk a little bit about the financial realities and the costs of cancer being treated outside of the standard of care. So looking at the fundraising side of it and how much it actually costs. So if you've never looked into treating cancer in private, that's to say not using the NHS or an insurance or anything else, you might be surprised at how much it costs. Now, those costs, they won't be as high necessarily as what they might be with something like the NHS, taking surgery costs with chemo and radiotherapy into account, because the whole package may cost tens of thousands of pounds, even hundreds of thousands of pounds if it's advanced cancers and long term. But for me, being with a stage 1 cancer, if there was help from the NHS, it would be a very, very, very cheap comparison to the really high cost drugs that they're forced to subscribe to as part of the standard of care. So I just want to touch on a couple of the costs of treating cancer privately. Now, one of the things that ideally you would want to get done, which is something that I would like to have happen, but don't have the funds to do just yet, would be to get my cancer tested against all of the various off-labels and supplements and see which ones are most effective. So this is something that you can't get done by the NHS as far as I'm aware. And I think the price is in the £2,000 to £3,000 range for doing it privately. I think RGCC are one of the better known companies for doing that. And even then you have to have a prescription to be able to get the procedure done. So then you've got to find a private doctor who's prepared to write you a prescription, so you can bung another 150 quid on top for a diagnosis, a chat and a prescription from a private medical doctor. So right up into the £3,000 mark just for finding out which drugs and supplements are going to work best for your cancer. Now, the fact that there's a test like this available, and I'll say only £3,000 because in the grand scheme of things, in medical terms, I can't see £3,000 being massive amounts of money. But for only £3,000 to know what types of drugs, chemicals, off labels, whatever you want to call them, are going to help treat your cancer, that seems like a really small price to pay. And why that isn't being offered on the NHS is absolutely beyond me, because I cannot see how it's not going to be of benefit to absolutely everybody or anybody who's got cancer. Now, there are plenty of other costs when it comes to treating cancer privately. So when we talk about metabolic therapy, it starts with the diet. So ketogenic diet, getting your fat consumption up, your protein down, your carbs down to next to nothing and no sugar. So a lot of people can probably do that without too much additional cost, if any, over their normal diet. But then you start having to add things like off-labels. So the off-labels I've chosen for 1 month are about 160, I think they were. I paid a little bit over that because one of them I could only order a certain quantity and it was more than I needed. So I think I paid $190, but actually for the month it's $160. And then I did some research on all of the supplements that are available for treating cancer in various ways that have anti-cancer properties that are tested to a certain extent by valid scientific methodology. And I found 8. There are another couple, 1 or 2 that I may add, but 8 supplements around the the £20-25 mark, for each of them. That's another couple of £100 there. If I wanted to do HBOT, which is something that's also talked about going along with the diet and the supplements and off labels, to get the 2.5 atmospheres in a hard shell near me, £70-75 a session. And you need to do, there's varying different prescriptions on this. I've seen people saying doing it 3 times a week on the same day as pulse days. Others are 5 days a week, but obviously pulse days would be included in that. But if you imagine you've got to do that for a minimum of 12 weeks, even if it's 3 times a week at £75 a pop, that builds up quite quickly. If you want to buy a hydrogen machine, £2,500 for one that does air and water. If you want an infrared halogen lamp, anything from £1,000 to £1,500 for the basic ones. There are more expensive ones, £2,500 for doing infrared and methylene blue. And all of these are things that have had testing done, so there is scientific evidence to say that they are of benefit, but none of them you can get help with on the NHS or through insurance or anything like that, because not enough testing has been done to prove that they are a cure for cancer. So, with me, the reason that I started a GoFundMe is, the $350 a month for me is, I'm barely making that, and that means I'm not including any of the other stuff that I just talked about. And I don't get any help with that from the NHS. I can't get any of that on prescription. If I wanted to start adding other things to the protocol, for each supplement that you add, you're looking at £20 to £25 minimum. Some of them are a bit more, they're into the £30-40 range. But you add 2 or 3 supplements, and instead of £350 a month, you're at £450 a month. So, financial reality has essentially led me to creating a GoFundMe to try and help me pay for my treatment privately. And this is something that I've not quite figured out how to do properly yet, because I thought I'd start by making these videos and hopefully giving people a bit of value, to show them the journey that I'm on, and to give them an idea of, if they wanted to do the same, some of the challenges that they might face. But I'm not having a great deal of success with raising funds now. I know, this is something that, a lot of people will struggle with. I've seen many campaigns out there with very low levels of donations. I'm lucky enough that I have had a couple of donations, which did help me with, buying my first lot of supplements. And I sent a thank you message to those people. I am very, very grateful that they did that for me. But I have to say, I do need more donations, and I'm not quite sure how exactly I go about doing that. I know I'm not the most cuddly person out there. I'm not the most I'm not the person that you're going to get those fuzzy vibes from. That's just not in my nature. I don't know how to connect with people in that way. I'm, I wouldn't say cold, but I'm fairly factual. But in terms of breaking down like the crowdfunding and the approach to generating more income through my GoFundMe campaign, honestly, I'm going to put it out there. I wouldn't mind if any of you know some tips or tricks of how I might go about doing that. This is a bit. I'm going to get some water out. Yeah, that would be something that would be really of benefit to me, because I don't really understand what's different between my campaign that I would say isn't very successful at the moment, because it's only had a couple of donations, despite me talking about the various struggles and things that I've overcome to get this far. To some of the campaigns that I look at that have like 2 sentences and are not just fully funded but have gone massively over, like several times over, and I'm not sure what I need to put out there to garner that kind of response. So if you've got any ideas, I really would love to know that, because obviously with me doing my metabolic therapy, as I've said before, I'm only on the very minimum protocol. The £350 a month of drugs is literally all I can afford to do. I'm trying to raise more money through the GoFundMe to get onto the HBOT, which will help even more, and potentially do some other things as well. But I must confess I am struggling a little bit with understanding what resonates with people and what enables people to connect with me. That's never been a strong point of mine. I mean, I feel like I'm okay at talking to people, I'm okay at explaining things and helping people, but this whole resonating thing and getting people to donate because they feel some sort of connection, I don't know, honestly, I just don't know how that works. So I mean, so far I've had £70 worth of donations in the first month of the campaign being live. I'm pretty sure that's going to be fairly low compared to a lot. But yeah, I mean, if you are able to donate even a small amount, just a few pounds, I would be really, really appreciative of that, because I'm going to need lots and lots of those small donations to be able to start to increase my metabolic therapy additions, as it were. Oh, that's nice. A bit of ice water in there. And as I've always said before, I mean, it doesn't have to be a donation for you to help me out. If you're able to share my story, that would be amazing too, because sharing my story would be, again, also really very valuable to me, because getting the message out there, not just about the struggles that I'm facing and anybody else trying to do metabolic therapy on their own, but just metabolic therapy in general. I mean, it is such a radical departure from what mainstream oncology is, and even though it's not approved by all the medical bodies, and there's not quite enough science there to tout it as a cure, in my opinion there is enough information there especially from the anecdotal side of things, of people that have tried it and done it, the full protocol, and had it work for them, that it's just not something that I can ignore. And so, yeah, really, it's a case of figuring out, for me, what is it that people need to hear to feel like it would be worth donating to somebody that's trying to share all about metabolic therapy but can't actually practice it because they can't afford it. I mean, that's kind of the irony here, I guess, is that I've done all the research, I know what I want to do, I know what I need to do, but I just don't have the funds to do it. So yeah, it's just me now trying to figure out ways of actually raising that money so that I can try it and show that it does work, and hopefully cure my stage 1 cancer before it goes to any other stage, or starts growing out of control or getting aggressive or anything. But I mean, for me, the priority is obviously first to be able to buy all of the off labels and make sure that I can stay taking them continually, even though I am still trying to figure out the best way of taking them, because I am getting some side effects which are a bit odd, to say the least. And then to extend that into the HBOT and maybe the hydrogen and maybe the methylene blue and infrared, and then like I've talked about in other videos, and I will start looking at all of the other alternative therapies as well. The meditation, particularly interested in the silver method, the energy healing, the acupuncture. Those things are things that I have heard people getting really good results from, but again, the science isn't robust enough, but the anecdotal stories are there. And so obviously my first sort of delving into the deeper depths of metabolic therapy aren't going to be any of those. It's going to be make sure I've got enough drugs, get any more that I might need, get onto the HBOT, and maybe look at the hydrogen. Possibly grounding is another thing that is something that, because of my autoimmune condition, using a grounding sheet or something like that might be really beneficial for me. But yeah, it's for me, it's one of those weird things that I'm not sure how I make that connection with people. So, like I say, if you're in a position to donate, that would be lovely. Thank you, amazing. I really appreciate you. If you're not and you're able to share my story, that would be fantastic. I'd be really, really grateful for that too. But if you've got any questions about the cost of trying to do metabolic therapy privately without any help from the NHS or any kind of insurance, go away creamfly, then please drop them below, because it's not necessarily a cheap venture. I mean, if I were able to go and buy everything I needed to do a full metabolic therapy for 12 to 16 weeks, I think you'd be looking at something in the 12 to 15,000 pound range. And like I say, my therapy at the moment is down in the 350 pound range, because that's what I can afford. I don't have the finances to do that. I'd love to do all that, because I'd love to do as much as I can to ensure that I get on top of this stage 1 cancer really quickly. But in terms of my finances, I'm just not able to do that. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please do drop them below. Let me know. If you want specifics, just ask. I'll go and look them up and I'll tell you. But yeah, I mean, 10 to 15,000 pounds is just for a recommended metabolic therapy protocol, what you would find Professor Seyfried talking about. I'm fairly certain that if you were to do everything out there that you could find related to metabolic therapy and were to put together an all-out, last chance, saloon, this is it, or, I'm not going to make it kind of, you could probably get up to 30, 40, 50,000 pounds without a great deal of effort and without going too far into experimental unproven stuff. And by that I mean there would be a lot of anecdotal evidence for some of the stuff that you'd be trying, even though it's not been fully scientifically proved. And again, I think it's worth saying at this point, I'm not a medical professional. I can't give medical advice. I can't recommend anybody follow me on this path because they won't have done necessarily the amount of research that I've done to understand exactly what risks I'm taking and what potential the downsides are. But I feel like I've got a pretty good chance of beating cancer without needing to irradiate my body, use poison, or to cut big chunks out of me that change the quality of my life forever. So that's just where I'm at. If you want to get to the same place as me, please do feel free to ask questions. But like I say, I am not a qualified medical professional, so I can't give you advice on that. Yeah, so having said that, coming back to the costs and the prices of metabolic therapy, not a cheap undertaking. Like I say, $350 to start, basic protocols. You're up to £2,000 or £3,000 over 12 weeks. For a full protocol that somebody like Professor Seyfried might talk about with the use of DON and HBOT and the number of times a week, you're probably looking at £6,000 or £7,000. And then when you start adding in infrared, hydrogen machines, you can add another £2,000 or £3,000 just for those. And then there's a whole load of other off-labels that range from hundreds to thousands of pounds. So yeah, prices can really start to stack up quite quickly. And yeah, you definitely won't be doing any kind of metabolic therapy by yourself without starting off at a minimum of like the 500 a month, which is kind of where I'm at. So yeah, I think we'll call that a wrap for this update. I don't want to put people off looking at metabolic therapy or trying it, but you really do need to know that this isn't something that you're going to get help with from insurers or the NHS, and if you want to do it all yourself, you do need to be prepared to go and find the funds to be able to do it effectively. And so with that, I'll say enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you on the next update. So goodbye for now.